while I was in Israel for 10 days, and Chris, you were criticizing me for the number of Instagram posts that I had. If you noticed, I wore the same hat.
I did notice
the
that.
rakish hat? Did you take it?
No, it's a Michigan hat. The number of times I had people stop me, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, just walking by me saying, "Go Blue," lost track.
Oh, I thought that. What does the M mean?
Lost track. Oh. Everyone knows.
No one thought it meant Meshuggah?
No. Look at you. That's the way I bring in my friend from Sports Illustrated, Albert Breer. How you doing, Albert?
It's just a coincidence. That's the way you bring me in, too, right?
Yeah, it's total coincidence.
And you guys sound like a bunch of people who've been away from the humidity of the East Coast for too long.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes shorts, it's like not even an option. You have to wear shorts sometimes here.
Now, Albert, when you're on a training camp tour, shorts is acceptable. Yeah. That's totally acceptable. You know, the crazy thing is
you're in 90-degree heat the whole time.
When I first did spring training reports for SportsCenter back in the late 90s or the mid to late 90s, I showed up in a full suit, and all the regular baseball media were looking at me like, "What is your malfunction?" I showed up. I showed up like Connie Mack managing a game in 1922, and everybody was wearing shorts,
really
whatever. That's really what it would look like.
Really good
when
reference.
I showed up at like Port Charlotte, Florida, it was 100% humidity, 105 out, and I'm like dressed like in a full suit. People are like, "What the hell is the matter?"
You know what makes it worse? What makes it worse, Rich, is you're coming from Connecticut, where that time of year it's still like
right.
45 degrees. So it's like 10 times worse for you than it is for the people that have been there for a while.
Exactly right.
Was that like an ESPN mandate then, or
no? It was my first roll at it, and trust me,
okay.
it took me 2 days in the spring training heat till I just brought the suit, hung it up somewhere, and then changed into it. And then a day after that, I just wore the suit jacket, and there was shorts underneath the out of frame. I got smart. I adapted.
You remember some of the pictures of me during the lockout, right? Like where I was like in the business district of DC, which is like literally a swamp. And I was wearing the uppers, and then I'd have like seersucker shorts on underneath, and I still had like the sweat ring around my neck on my dress shirt.
Albert Breer,
and then it was a few weeks on the other side, like across the street, that law firm that was across the street from the Port Authority, where you guys had me breathing in bus fumes for 2 weeks.
By the way, don't you guys me? It wasn't me. I was the one in the studio in Los Angeles losing the remaining parts of my hair that were still hanging on for dear life in 2011, hosting NFL Total Access during a lockout, saying who will be the top running backs in free agency. If there's a free agency, we don't know if the rules are going to happen. We don't know if the season's going to happen. And guys, you don't understand. You probably remember. You remember Albert Breer? Where were you? Were stationed at the same street corner in Washington D.C., outside of the Players Association headquarters. Truly, like you were arrested for vagrancy, I think, at one point, right?
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, like I don't know. Like Nantucket red shorts in the bottom, sitting in a can here on the street corner, but that was me.
I don't know if you're
still at the league office. My signature.
I don't know if you're strolling through the sunken ship right now on Nantucket, but your phone's going in and out. You there, Albert? You there, Albert?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hold on a minute. One more time. You there, Albert? I'll give you another shot. I put him back. Put him back on hold. I think he might be in Belichick's basement right now. I don't know.
He's walking Nike the dog.
I don't know what's happening. He's walking Nike. Is he walking around right now? Getting his George Hamilton tan on right now? There we go. All right, let's get him back on the horn. All right. There you go. No, just hang up and try it one more time.
He's walking around.
Oh, is he really? Is it what's happening right now?
Yeah.
You're going to give it a full play-by-play? Albert Breer, everybody? Sports Illustrated, Albert. We're just chit-chatting. Honestly, I lost all my remaining hair back in that time.
Oh, that was insane.
Mike.
Are you back there, Albert? You back?
Thanks.
I'm actually walking on Target. That's what I'm doing. No,
what are you doing?
Target's like the drug for the kids now, so they love coming to Target. Pulled that out like last week. So they're just things you're trying to do to fill up the day.
Got it. So stay right where you are. Don't move. Just stay in that aisle wherever you are.
You got it.
What happened in Buffalo last week? What in the world happened with Stefon Diggs? Best you can tell.
I mean, I'll tell you, it's hard to come up with answers, and I one thing that like I have been able to ascertain is that, like, they feel like they're in a good place now, and that maybe some conversations that should have happened earlier happened. And part of it was that he wasn't around for, the off-season program, the bulk of the off-season program. But, my understanding of it, like, is part of it is sort of who Diggs is. And, my read on that would be that this is a guy who's hyper-competitive and who wants to win and who went through what he went through, which we all saw on national television last year. And like a lot of receivers, a lot of the best receivers, he believes the best way to win for the team is through him. And so, I think there was some hard discussions that had to be had. And I mean, look, like I can even remember when the Hopkins thing was going on in April, the Bills were leery about that because they were like, well, there's only one ball and we know we have to get it to Steph a lot, So this is something I know that's been on the radar. And look, I don't think it makes him a bad guy. I think he's a legitimately good guy. But there is this thing with receivers that we've seen for a good 25 years now that I think exists with Diggs that you have to manage, that, as part of his exit from Minnesota. We know about the acrimony between him and Kirk Cousins there. And I think they feel like they've got it worked out. That doesn't mean it's going to go away permanently, but I know they feel like they've got it managed for right now.
So it's a football-related issue? It's a play-calling-related issue? Like, what's the issue?
And that's what's hard to dig into. You know what I mean? They've been pretty tight-lipped about the whole thing. But I do think, if you want to, again, read into who Steph's been, a hyper-competitive, winning matters to him. His relationship with Josh Allen's been really good over the last few years. And, the one thing that you can point to is, there was a coaching change, and they did lose Brian Daboll a year ago. And so there was some transition there schematically in what they do. And, look, I think, what Diggs wants is to be in the best position to compete for a championship, in 2022. And again, like a lot of other star receivers, the ball doesn't go your way all the time. And, this is a guy who was targeted a lot last year. And I think part of it is kind of getting on the same page philosophically. And I think that they do believe that they're there. So, we'll see where it goes. I think I'm certainly not your first rodeo, Rich, and not mine either.
Yeah.
We've seen the way that, eventually one team's problems can become another team's problems, and like the same way, Terrell Owens' problems in San Francisco, those are the Niners' problems, then they became the Eagles' problems, then they became the Cowboys' problems. Randy Moss, the Vikings' problems became the Raiders' problems, eventually became the Patriots' problems. So I wouldn't say that this thing is done, but I do think they feel like they've got it managed for now.
But it took all the way to the first day of mandatory minicamp to figure this out?
Guys, and that's part of the problem, is that, like, when you don't have a guy around for the 8 weeks of the off-season program that lead into that last week, well, then did you really address it? And maybe there were conversations, but did you really address it face-to-face? Was it handled? And what sort of frame of mind did he come in? If he's coming in April or May, well, maybe this stuff happens behind closed doors and nobody ever knows about it. But because it's during that mandatory minicamp when the media is out there and everything else, it happened in a very, very public way.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe the reception's bad at his house and they weren't FaceTiming him.
We know about bad reception.
Right. That's the head scratcher here. And then, of course, it can't be. I don't know. There was a moment where he was going at Josh Allen in that playoff loss to Cincinnati. And so I totally understand if there are people who are going through the all 22 of that game to see if they can identify what was the issue there and then extrapolate it out to what could still be the issue now. That one has to think, Albert, because, again, this is not your first rodeo, nor is it mine. This couldn't have been put to bed completely, where if something similar doesn't happen on the first Monday night in front of the whole country, because it's going to be the ESPN opener with Aaron Rodgers as the Jet opener, whole country's going to watch that. How is this potentially not going to come home to roost, whatever it is?
Well, and that's what, and that's the thing, you know what I mean? Is like, it's a lot easier to handle it in June and manage it in June. when you're away from the live bullets, and when you don't have a camera on you and a camera on your every move. And I think that like, as an astute observation by you, I hadn't thought about that, but that is true. I mean, for good reason, ESPN's probably going to have a camera isolated on Diggs the whole game because of this. You know what I mean? Whatever little thing goes wrong, we're all going to see it. And I think that's probably the fallout of an event like this, and again, with, great receivers in the past, guys like Moss and Owens, we've been through this before. We've seen it before where so much attention, kind of gets foisted on it, and then the issue kind of builds on itself, and the pressure can make people crack. It'll be interesting to see because, clearly that Bills team went through a lot last year, apart from just this, with the being displaced twice by the snowstorms. There's obviously the tragic shooting at the supermarket before the year. There's the DeMar Hamlin thing. That team went through a lot last year. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this one, because I think my personal feeling is that that was a more worn out team than anyone realized at the end of the year when they lost the Bengals in the divisional round. I think that team was emotionally and physically spent. And, I think part of getting away from each other and, resetting, I sometimes things like this are part of all of that. And I think their hope would be that this event is sort of part of all of that, of resetting and pointing towards 2023.
Senior NFL
that'd obviously be the optimistic way of looking at it.
Senior NFL reporter from Sports Illustrated, the MMQB's Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. What's the clock here on Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins? And those are two big time names that could really improve a team's chances to win a trophy. Albert.
Well, I mean, we're getting to the point here where a lot of the lights are off in NFL team offices.
Mm-hmm.
And, people are away on their vacations. So, if it doesn't happen in the next couple of days, I'd say you probably push pause on the whole thing, and we're not going to see anything until at least the middle of July. And look, there's some strategy to that too if you're the players, right? So Hop had good visits with the Titans and the Patriots last week. Got a good relationship with Mike Vrabel. He's intrigued with the idea of playing for Bill Belichick. And so I think he likes those two places, but are those true contenders? And if they aren't true contenders, are they making up for that with the money? I think if they were, if they were getting him close to what Odell Beckham got from Baltimore, he probably would have signed in one of those places. So now if you're Hopkins and, the money isn't quite what you want, and maybe you're not contending the way you want to in a New England or a Tennessee, do you wait to see if Kansas City gets Chris Jones signed to a mega extension, which will bring his cap number down, which could create space for the Chiefs to take another look at you? So that's the sort of thing I think he'd be looking at. With Cook, I mean, the Dolphins and Vikings had a trade worked out in March that fell through at sort of the last minute. And the Dolphins wanted to add this explosive element that would match what they have in Waddle and Hill, a receiver, in the backfield. They drafted Devin Achane from Texas A&M in the second round when the Cook thing fell through. And so, part of this, I think, is how do they feel about Achane, coming out of the break and going into camp? And where does that put them as far as adding somebody? And then, of course, at that position, as I mean, anything can happen, So I think if you're Cook, you look at it and the possibility that there's an injury, the first 3 or 4 weeks of camp could spring some money loose too. So I think that's sort of part of it. It's just hoping that new suitors will emerge over the next month or so that'll change the market.
And to me, I said at the top of the show, Albert, that this has reached the point. Dalvin Cook now is truly with the Vikings and whoever hires Cook, and what Alexander Madison does with the Vikings, and if the Dolphins don't hire Cook and go with a second-round choice and Devin Achane instead, the absolute laboratory moment for this position and how the league views it, big time, because you got 4 years in a row he's run for 1,000 yards, 52 touchdowns. His despite his shoulder injury, his production, Dalvin Cook's, is undeniable. Yep. Top of the food chain in the NFL at this position. And they're going to go with Alexander Madison instead. And the Dolphins are like, well, we tried to get him, but we're going to go with this kid we got in the second round. What in the hell's happening with this position in the NFL?
Well, I mean, I think it's a combination of things. I think number one, you have less unicorn athletes playing it, right? Like, so like there's, and you can like look at like the college football recruiting rankings and see where the top high school athletes are. They're all receivers. You know what I mean? And for good reason. Because I think the 16-year-old kid who's elite would look at this and say, why would I ever want to play running back? So where the best athlete 30 years ago is playing running back, that guy's playing receiver now. So that's part of it, and then I think the other part of it is just becomes too easy to fill that position. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that Cook or Mixon or Chubb or any of these guys aren't great players. It's that you can get by with less. It's that you can find a suitable answer somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, look at the Chiefs. They start Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th-round rookie in the Super Bowl. Look at the Eagles on the other side of the Super Bowl. They let Miles Sanders go, and they let him go. He was their starting running back, a really good player for them, despite the fact that he only got $6 million a year from the Panthers. That was the top of the running back market in free agency. So, like, I think the idea is it's just, there aren't as many elite, like truly unicorn-type players at the position, and there's depth. It's easier to find one on the other end of it, and that sort of flattens the market out. And the last thing I'd add there is I think it's sort of the ramification of the NFL, too. The Rams showed, like, other teams, like, if you can find elite players at premium positions, you can make it work everywhere else. And so, I think more teams are looking at it that way, where they're saying, we need to invest in corners. We need to invest in left tackles. We need to invest in pass rushers, and obviously quarterbacks too, and receivers. We can get by with a lesser off-ball linebacker. We can get by with a lesser guard. We can get by with a lesser running back.
What am I missing? What's the other big story heading into the summer before I let you go the rest of your day?
You know what? I'm the one thing that I'm really, I'm going to have on my radar from the start of the season is the two quarterbacks in college. I really think, Rich, that's going to be hanging over the bottom of the standings all year. And so, does USC's Caleb Williams deliver the way I think everybody expects him to deliver in the fall? Same with Drake Maye at North Carolina. Like, those two guys are both seen as, like, legitimate. They could be the first pick in any draft type of prospects of the position. And then you got teams like the Cardinals at the other end of it, where it's just going to be interesting. And I think the one thing I want to put on your radar there is when we get to the trade deadline, do we see fire sales like we've never seen before? Because as you and I know, tanking is really hard in football. You don't have a guaranteed contract. It's hard to tell guys not to go 100% in that sport. It just doesn't work, right? But do we see teams just aggressively offloading players that are at the bottom of the standings ahead of the trade deadline? I think it could make things really interesting going forward. And so that's one thing that's just going to be, like, just from a global standpoint on my radar over the next 6 months, where I think Caleb Williams and Drake Maye could have a material effect on the NFL season.
Huh. Yeah, I think so, too. And I got an eye on Arizona for that, right? Depending on...
Yeah, no question. I mean,
right, that's
and
the one.
What's interesting about it, too, Rich, people have criticized Arizona. Like, I don't know what people wanted Monty Austin for and Jonathan Gannon to do. I mean, that team was bad last year, and it gotten old. And they've got a quarterback coming off an ACL, right? Like, did you want to hang on to A.J. Green and Rodney Hudson and J.J. Watt, like that older core? Like, did you were you looking to build that way again? Like, the smart thing to do was to strip it down. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't even know if that's tanking so much as it is like what the team like legitimately should do in this spot. So I think they're going to be interesting. I mean, Washington, I think they've got a chance to be good, but if they aren't, like, do we see change from the new owner right away? Mm-hmm. I mean, remember, that new owner in Washington is the one who ran the process in Philadelphia with the Sixers, right? Like, so, like, does he start to act on things in the middle of the year? There are a lot of teams that are going to be interesting in that sort of way. And, again, like, it's not like those teams are devoid of good players, so it could make for some pretty interesting days leading up to the trade deadline.
You're the man, Albert. Thanks for that. Oh, and by the way, you bring up college football. Did you see that, Albert, that USC and UCLA both are on the Michigan schedule, and you only get one the first time? Did you see that? Michigan plays both, and Ohio State only plays UCLA. You don't play USC until their second year. Michigan gets them both in the first year. I wonder why. I wonder why the Big Ten decided to do that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know.
Really?
I mean, I've got some television ratings that
Really?
I think could counter the point that you're trying to make.
No. I mean, I'm not making a point. I'm just the point is that Michigan gets you got to play Ohio State and Michigan State and Penn State and UCLA and USC the first year that they're both there.
Is that right?
You get them split up. You get them split up. You get them split.
I will say this.
Yeah.
I was rather, and maybe that's punishment for your non-conference schedule.
Oh,
I don't know. I mean,
really?
it's possible.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Possible punishment for playing like the Hawaiis and the Colorado States so well. But
yeah. You got your spring game. Your first game's against Southern Miss and then a TBA. I wonder who TBA is going to be filled with in 2024.
We played Notre Dame.
Yeah, Notre Dame stopped playing Michigan because they ran scared. That's true. By the way, that's a fact. That's a fact. No, those are facts.
That's why Hawaii's on the schedule. Then.
I mean, you got to find people who are willing to play Michigan. Albert,
I will say this.
Yes.
I was upset that Penn State wasn't a permanent rival for us. I thought that was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, it just feels like that's become a rival of ours. And you guys had two, right? Because you guys had us and Michigan State. I thought that was weird how, like, there was, like, this uneven amount of permanent rivals for each of the teams.
Yeah.
It just struck me as strange.
I know Penn State's not on the Michigan schedule either in 2024.
Well, Penn State doesn't have any permanent rivals. You know that?
Oh, I'm aware of that. Because they are not permanent rivals of ours. We understand that. So at least we're lockstep on that.
Oh, boy.
Albert, appreciate the time. Appreciate it. Go work on your tan when you're not in the target. Okay?
All right. Thanks, guys.
Take care, brother. Great Albert Breer, everybody. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.